Okay, we got a little stream going, which I don't do this super often. Let me get my students the link to join the live stream here. Share. I'm gonna paste it in chat. You guys have the link to the live stream that'll allow you to rewind as I go through. So what? I'm getting some feedback. Ryan, is that you? Mic check.
Mine is muted.
Hello?
Yeah, my mic is muted.
I hear your headphones. No worries. We're building a MonoRepo today. What a MonoRepo is where you put the whole MERN stack in one application, in one folder structure. Sometimes in the MERN stack you have separate repositories, one for the front end, one for the back end. And in this class I teach it as such that both the front end and the back end are in one folder structure, one repository, if you will. What I will do is I'll start by creating a GitHub repo. You guys in this class, do a lot of you have one repository for all your coursework. You might not be super familiar with creating your own repository, so it's a pretty simple process that I'll go through, create a new repository for this. This is the project, if you will, is I'm going to call it Lawn Connect MERN. And so, what is Lawn Connect? It's a silly name for a marketplace. And you guys all know marketplaces if you know what Uber is or Uber Eats or, you just connect people, right? And so this is going to be a marketplace for people with lawn care companies and people who want their lawns mowed, businesses or residential. And so I'm going to make a mock app that connects people. We're going to call it Lawn Connect.
And this is the thing.
And this is, it's just the name of it. Yeah, just whatever I'm calling it. You do not have to create the repo. So for these steps, just follow along. You don't have to create a repo unless you really want to. A marketplace for connecting lawn care companies with business people who want their lawn cut. Okay. Visibility, obviously public is public to the internet, private is just you, so we can make this public. I would like you guys to work on this repo, make contributions, and so this can be a public, this could be a class project is kind of the vision for it. No template to start out with. A template is if there's like code that you want to start with. I don't want to start with any code. We can add a README. We can add a gitignore. Now, when you have a gitignore template, you could say this is a node app, and it will ignore the common files that are found in a node app, such as node modules. Remember, node modules is that downloads folder that all the dependencies go into. You do not want to put that on GitHub. So we can look at the gitignore for this. And I always choose MIT license, which is, if you want to use any part of my code, you're free to do so. That's what an MIT license says. I'm going to create a repository. Again, just to glance at the gitignore, you could see there's actually a lot of kinds of files that you can ignore in different folders. But there's our node modules folder, right? I just mentioned that one folder. That means anything inside of that folder do not put on GitHub, right? So the folder as indicated by the /. So now that I've got this repo kind of spun up, of course, this is on github.com. You have to clone this repository onto your local computer. So I'll do that, right click and click on, I use TortoiseGit a lot. TortoiseGit is built into Windows. And so a lot of the Git commands are just off of a right click, and it's a GUI based tool similar to GitHub Desktop. But I'm a big fan of TortoiseGit. And this folder is going to be called Lawn Connect MERN. Go ahead and do that. Were you guys able to join the live stream? Okay. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so it's very delayed.
Yeah, it's intentionally. I think that's intentional. And so that's the app that we're building. I'm going to open this up in VS Code. And I've got some reference code on my other screen. Okay, and so we are off, and let's close that little Copilot chat. And maybe I zoom in a little bit so you guys can see a little better. Okay, how do we get started? You guys remind me. What's the command to get a MERN app up and running?
Run init.
npm init. Okay. And so here's npm init. This is going to be the interactive one. Package name, Lawn Connect MERN's good, version 1. Okay, now here you get to define the name of the entry point for Express. And so we'll just keep it index.js. That's a pretty common convention. Sometimes you see it server.js, no big deal. Test command. We can modify all of this later on. I'll leave that empty. You notice it did pick up my Git repository, which is cool. Lawn Connect Marketplace, Lawn Care. And there we go in the stream. Someone says, I have a friend that does landscaping and cuts huge lawns. Okay, we got a website for this person. That's funny. I think this might be the first time I've ever got a live chat. How about that? Who cares? Moving on. Lawn Care, Connect Marketplace, Lawn Care. We can change this later. Author, Evan Gudmested. And license, MIT license. Is this okay? Enter for yes. That creates the package.json. Okay, remember, as we're installing dependencies like Express, that's what we're going to do next. We're going to install Express. We do not do so with package.json open. The command to install Express was
Run Express.
not run. npm I for install Express. Pretty simple command. So we've got two commands so far, npm commands, npm init, npm I express. Remember, npm comes with Node. You download Node, you get npm for free. All right, and so now we have Express version 5, major version 5, minor version patch update. That's the three. That's the standard for that. This caret means that you can upgrade everything else besides major version 5. Major version 5 is on lock. You can update the minor version or the patches. Okay. Now we're also going to bring in our React front end, right? Because Express is the back end, right? Running on top of Node that allows us to run JavaScript in the back end. We know React is the front end, right? React has components, and we're going to install React. Now, Vite React is the bundler, I guess you called it, the tool that allows us to install React. There was some different tools we used some years ago, but here npm create vite at latest is the command to install React. So here we're going to install React. We're going to install React as a subfolder inside of our root. Let's paste that command, npm create vite at latest. Okay, now project name. Hey, Deshaun, you with me? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yesterday I told you incorrectly. This is the folder name. This is the subfolder name. And so what did I tell you? I forgot what I told you. This is just the subfolder name. And I typically name this my front end.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if I told you to name that front end. I don't know if I told you to name it something different. But that's just the subfolder name. Okay, now select a framework. I can use the arrow keys to arrow up and down. And there are different front ends that we could build with this Vite tool. Like this Svelte is actually a pretty popular one. But nonetheless, this class is about React. And then even with React, there's a lot of options. I just use the vanilla JavaScript option when I'm installing that one. Now when you're done here, it tells you right away to run these three commands: cd front end, npm install, npm run dev. Okay, so what that does is it installs the React dependencies. So notice this front end, we don't have node modules in the front end. Right now we have node modules in the back end, in the root if you will. But the front end does not have its node modules. Therefore, React's not going to ever run properly without the downloads for that node modules. So that's what those commands do. cd front end, npm install. This is going to download, this is going to open the floodgates and download all the node modules for React. And then npm run dev. Remember, npm run is how you run scripts. Scripts are defined inside of package.json. Okay, so if I go in my front end and I look in the package, yes, there's a separate package.json for the front end. Okay, there's a back end package.json and there's a separate front end package.json. So this is the front end package.json, and I can see a few different scripts. There's a dev script and there's a build script. Okay, so this tells us to run the dev script. Okay, when you run the dev script, npm run dev, you only run the front end. So this is running the React app by itself. Okay, this is not running the Express app in the back end. This is only running the front end React. Okay, so I don't do that a ton, but instead, so I'm going to close that. I'm going to Control C here. Okay, but what I am going to do is I'm going to run this other script called build. Okay, watch what happens when I run the build script. npm run build. Again, npm run says run a script. Which script are we running? We're running the script called build that's inside of package.json on our front end. When I do that, watch what happens. It does this build, and it says building for production. And it generated some files. It generated a dist folder. And inside of this dist folder, an index.html, that's a static index.html, some CSS, and some JavaScript. Okay, and those are inside of the assets folder. So there's assets, and there's a CSS file, and there's a JavaScript file. So you guys need to hear me on this. Like, I'm talking a lot, but you guys need to hear me on that. This build script, if you make a change to your HTML or your CSS or your front-end JavaScript, If you change any of your front end code, you have to run this build script to regenerate these static files. Okay, so that's part of the process, is regenerating this. You end up running this build script every time you change your front end code. Okay, to regenerate these static files, and I'll show you why. Okay, but for now, I've run this build script. I'm going to go back up a directory, cd ... Change directory ... means go up one directory. Watch my command prompt, go up a directory. Okay, that's old school DOS commands, right? Literally, like if you ever were alive before Windows, you had Microsoft DOS, MS-DOS, and that's an old school MS-DOS command. Okay, this cd front end, cd ... those are just command line. They've been around forever. Okay, so that's the front end. We're not going to touch the front end for a little bit. We're going to come back to the front end. Okay, but on the back end, we need to create our, we got Express installed. We need to create our entry file. We said our entry file is named index.js. So I'm going to create a file here called index.js. I'm going to go to expressjs.com. I'm going to rip off the hello world example. You guys, what I've learned the longer I've done this is this is the old require syntax of common JavaScript. More apps are built using the old syntax than the new syntax. When I started doing this, I'm like, I'm just going to use the imports. I don't want to use the old syntax. Give me the new syntax. But so often, demo examples are done using the old syntax. So it doesn't really matter. It might make it easier on yourself if you just use the older syntax. It doesn't really matter so much. Let me paste that in for hello world. And save it. And what I like to do is I'm going to put http://localhost:. So when I save that, okay, that's going to give me a clickable link in the terminal window. And I'm also going to make a script here that's going to be my start script. Actually, if I go to the front end package.json, they've got a like a dev script. I'm just going to make my start script npm run start. That's the command, npm run start for this. I'm going to run node mon index.js. And we're going to come back to this command. So if I do npm run start, we get our Express server boot up on port 3000 because that was defined right here. I can control click and it spits back hello world. Everyone doing okay so far? You seen this before? Cool. Now, couple lines of what I call boilerplate Express. Okay, I don't know that I've lectured on this, but first off, the order here matters. And so right after I define the app, I'm going to spit out this app.use. This is referred to as middleware. This allows our Express app to accept HTML forms. You guys remember HTML forms? You got the form tag, you got a submit button, and when a user clicks the submit button, it sends data to Express. It sends data to the back end. We're no longer just creating the front end, we're creating the back end too. This line of code allows Express to take data that a user would put in their form And now you can read that data. You can see here it says URL encoded. Okay, that means that the data is up in the URL, and that's how the form is submitted when you do a post, right? In fact, a lot of times you see it looking something like this. Like you see up in the URL, like the name is John and the age is 30. You guys have all seen this before, right? Up in the URL. Okay, and what that does is see this REQ? Anyone remember what REQ was short for? Request. The client makes a request. And so it would take this data, like name and age, and attach it to the request object. So you might have something like rec.body.name, and that holds the value of John. And so just as an example, with this line, you can now say rec.body.name, and that would hold the value of age. That's why this is boilerplate. You got to have it. It allows front ends with forms and form data to submit to the back end, and then you read that with rec.body. Okay, and then to read the age, of course, would be rec.body.age. Okay, so this is boilerplate. There's one more line that's boilerplate. It's a little bit different, but pretty similar. Again, app.use. When you see app.use, you know this is middleware. This is also middleware. Remember, middleware is just code that runs in a request-response lifecycle. Request comes in, response goes out. Any function that runs in between is called middleware. So this express.json, instead of coming from the form, so again, this is coming from data from a form, right? This one allows it to accept JSON from or into the request.body. So JSON is another way that your API can receive data. And we want to basically say, hey, take that JSON, and I'll show you how to actually send JSON to your APIs, and I'll show you how to send URL encoded data. Okay, so we can send both from the front end. This is easy because this is on a form. You're kind of familiar with that. We probably haven't written so much JSON. Okay, so that's boilerplate. Next line of boilerplate. So boilerplate stuff here. Here's the third line. App.use express.static frontend hyphen dist or /dist. We saw this a little bit the other day when we were learning Express, how to serve up static files. Remember when we did the build, it made this dist folder. Remember inside of the dist folder, we have our index.html. This is a static file that loads your JavaScript and your CSS. And, you know, this is how React works. Is that it's a single page application. Anyways, this serves our front end static files so that if I control save this, okay, now when I go to localhost 3000, now it actually serves up, instead of serving up hello world, now with that middleware, it serves up my static front end. It serves up my front end visually, instead of, what was it doing before? It was doing this hello world. I don't need hello world anymore. I'm using React as my front end. I don't need hello world. Okay, so this is how you're kind of merging the back end and the front end. This one line is a very nice line of code that merges the back end and the front end. And now when I save that, again, we got that. Okay? Now let's do are environment variables, because we got this port, maybe it's port 3000 on my computer, maybe it's port 5000 on your computer. There's a range of available ports, like between 2 and 5,000. Like anything, I forget the available ports. Maybe it's above 1,000, but it's like a range, pretty wide range between 1,000 and 5,000, maybe even higher, right? A port is just, think of it as a window, like a request comes into your computer, and a port is a number, and then based on the port number, it knows where to send the software. Like a request can come in, an email request, a web page request, a database request. There's all kinds of requests that can come into servers, and based on the port number, it knows what software, where to send that request. Okay, so when we say port 3000, we're just saying send that request when it comes in on port 3000 to Express. That's what the port number says, is to just send it to Express. I like to use the year 2025, okay? But my port on my computer might be a different port when I go to deployment. So port is an example. It might be one thing on my computer. It might be another thing on another computer. That's a pure definition of an environment variable. Depending on the environment, you have a different port number. Okay, so instead of storing our port inside of here, okay, we're going to make an environment variable. All right, so remember environment variables .env, capital port equals 2025. Now, yesterday we kind of learned this doesn't work anymore. Why? Obviously, because I have to finish this up. Package.json. Now here, we have to do --, dot, let me see, I always forget this. It's not dot, it's env -file.env. Okay, so here, --env file .env, index.js. Now here, so we'll do const port equals process.env.port or 3000. So if it reads it from the env file, it would be 2025, or if it can't read it from the env file, it's 3000. Port 2025, process.env.port. Let me close this down, because anytime you add an env file, you need to reboot the server manually. And let's see if that's okay. Now it's 2025. Okay, I just had to do my manual reboot. Okay, so now I'm reading from the .env file. You can see it's getting 2025 from there. And we are cooking. Okay, so now we get to start defining routes, and we haven't learned database yet. So because we haven't learned database yet, we just put all of our data in as dummy data. And for right now, we're going to put it all in this one file, and then we'll refactor later on and use modules and React router and things like that. Not React router, Express routing. Express router. So I'm going to define some mock data, and I'm going to do this again. This is just going to be an array of my companies, and I'm going to do this kind of up top. So here's some mock data. I'm going to have two companies to kind of start with. Company ID. So what do we have here? We have an array of objects. Each company has an ID, a name, an array of services that they offer, and a rating, presumably from people. right? These companies get rated by the clients, and then we also are going to have an array of jobs. Jobs, instead of just starting at 1, we're going to start it at 101 and 102, job ID, customer name, address, description, and then a job status, either pending, completed, whatever other status there may be. And so this is just temporary mock data so that we can build some express routes. Okay. So now we're going to build our first route in Express. And again, the order matters here. So after the serving of our middleware, so here's all of our middleware calls. There's 3 middleware calls with app.use. We're going to define a back-end route to get all of the companies. And so there's 2 companies. So the express route to do this, app.get/API/companies. Then we have an anonymous function, request and response. It's an arrow function, curlies, semicolon at the end. And all we do here is use a response object to send back a status of 200. Status of 200 means?
It takes 200 seconds.
Nope.
2 milliseconds.
Nope. This is an HTTP status code.
Like a success, okay?
Success. 200 means success. So it's a successful response. We're going to send back JSON of our companies, which is an array. Okay, so we've defined our first route on the back end. Now we get to test that route. If you have jumped ahead a little bit in the class, you might have been exposed to Postman. Maybe you've seen Postman before, maybe you haven't. This is the icon for Postman down here.
Isn't that like a food service or something?
No. It might be something else. But Postman in this world allows us to send requests to our API. This is our Express API that's going to get data for us. And in this case, it's going to get a list of our companies. And so if you guys haven't already, go ahead and go to Postman website, sign up for an account. It's free. And download the Postman for Windows software. Okay, while we're walking through this, let me show you how to use Postman. Raise your hand if you used Postman before. 2? Cool. Ryan, have you used Postman before?
No.
No? Okay. So if you have not used Postman, you're going to want to zone in for me.
For free.
Postman looks like this. Don't worry about the account now. Just follow along for now. I know I said do it, but this is what Postman looks like. Postman is a browser on steroids. Browsers are used to send requests from the front end to the back end. But if you're going to do that, if you're going to build a front end, you have to build the HTML form. You have to define the inputs. You have to give them IDs. You have to style them a certain way so that it looks decent. Okay? You don't have to build the form here. You just use Postman to send your backend data, send your backend information. Okay, so let me act like I don't have Lawn Connect because I already did this once. Oh, type delete. Okay. So if you download and install Postman, it's going to look something like this. You should get to the screen. What you have over here are folders. And they're not called folders, they're called collections. But everything you do in Postman, you want to organize. You want to organize your requests into collections. So I'm going to create a new blank collection. And we're going to call this collection Lawn Connect. And then even within there, inside the Lawn Connect collection, I'm going to make another folder. And this is going to be for company requests. So these are coming from the client, requests about the companies. Okay? So all these are essentially are folders. You got one that's called a collection, and you've got another one called company requests. All that so I can now add a request. Okay, now here's the different parts. This is the name of the request. We'll give it a name here in a little bit. This is the URL. So how do we get to the backend URL? We said localhost port 2025 /API/companies. So to hit the express route, that's our full path. Localhost 2025 API companies. And by the way, this is an HTTP GET request. Line 26, that's what the GET means. This is an HTTP GET request. So in order to fill this, I'm going to go to http://localhost:2025/API/companies. Click send, and I get the data back. Okay, so this is working. What is this demonstrating? That our back-end routes would send the data to the front end if you hit this URL. Okay, so that's, we've defined an API route that's /API/companies that returns all the companies. So then what are we doing here? I mean, typically this is CRUD operations is really what we're doing. We can create a new company, we can read a company, we can update a company, we can delete a company. So those are normal operations. That's what we're doing here. We're, as I've joked about before, it's like we're CRUD monkeys. Like we just do CRUD on everything. Okay, so in this case, we're doing CRUD on a company. Company has an ID, a name, services, and a rating. So let's, instead of getting all the companies, let's make a route to get one company. We can read a single company at a time. Okay, we'll come back to this. Close, minimize. Okay, so this is another app.get /API/companies /:ID. The :ID is called a route variable, right? You could pass in the number 1, you could pass in the number 2, you can pass in the number 20. Okay, but it's a variable and that's going to come from the URL. That's what the colon signifies here. Same syntax as before. Request object, response object, arrow, curlies, semicolon. Let's write a little bit of JavaScript. Const company equals, we have an array, so we can use the find method, pass it a lambda. Let's see if that looks right. Find C, where the CID equals, okay, this is good. I'm going to write it, companies.find, find a company where the company.id So that's the ID property on the company object. Triple equals rec.params.id. What is rec.params.id? It's the value that comes from ID. This name has to match this name. Like literally this dot right here has to match the name of that identifier. If those two don't match, it's not going to work. Okay? But remember, the request is what comes from the client. Params just basically says go to your URL and get the ID out of the URL. If if company is falsy, then let's send a 404 back. Return res status 404 company not found. Otherwise, send a success, a 200 back. 404 is not found. 200 is success. And send the company that's returned from our find method. Save that. Notice, because I'm using NodeMon, my server reboots. Go into Postman to test it. Okay, now, important part. I'm talking a lot. It's easy to ignore me. This is an important part. Don't forget to save your request. Give it a good name and save it in an organized folder. It will save you time later on. It will save you time later on. So the way to save it, Control S. I don't like the new request name, so you can click right here. We're going to call this Get All Companies. Okay, now I can close it and get all companies and click send, and it still gets all the companies. Okay, now here under company requests, I'm going to click this little plus. This will generate another get request. Notice the HTTP verbs are over here, right? So get is retrieving, post is creating something new, put and patch are both updates, minor differences, but put and patch are updates, deletes, obviously delete. And those are the main ones we're going to work with. Let's go to http:// It's actually all of this. Let's just paste that in. /1, that's just going to get company number 1. Obviously number 2 gets company number 2. /3, there is no company 3, so instead we get company not found 404. Right, so notice right here 404 not found. Kind of going back here, you see the 200 status being sent back, and Postman can read the status codes as well. Right. So that's, now what do we do? I'm going to control save that and call this get company by ID. Give that a good name. Okay, and we can save it and close it. And we got our 2 get requests. So now let's do adding a new company. App.post. If we're posting to API companies, again, the syntax is request response, arrow function, curly braces. Okay, now, when you're getting, we're going to learn data validation. You guys are very familiar with data validation on a web form. If you ever fill it out incorrectly, you get the red box that says you forgot your middle name. That's data validation, right? You want to validate data on the front end. You also want to validate data on the back end. So we're going to learn to validate data on the back end as well. For right now, I'm not going to do data validation. Instead, we're going to create an object. So here's a JavaScript object. We're going to set the ID property equal to companies.length plus 1. Well, what's the length of companies?
2.
2. Plus 1 is 3. And we can put it into a string because the other ones are strings. So you take the number 3, convert it to a string. Comma, check out this syntax, rec.body. Let's talk about this syntax. Okay, so line 37 creates an object called new company. The first property is the ID property. Now rec.body is an object, it's a JavaScript object. In fact, let me, just to demonstrate this, I'm going to comment this out. And here's what I'm going to do. res.json rec.body. Okay, so when I post to companies, I'm just going to send back the data that's in rec.body. I might need to stringify this to make it look pretty, but I just want to show you the data that's in rec.body. Okay, so that you can know what's in there. So I'm going to generate a new request. Now the important thing here that students always forget is to change this from a get to a post request. We're going to post to this route right here. So we're going to post to 2025 API companies. Remember that URL encoded line that I had? And I said that allows you to accept HTML forms. If I go to body, URL form encoded. So again, these are little tabs down here. And what I did is I clicked on this body tab. And then I clicked on this radio button for form encoded. That's how you send data like as if this is a web form. Okay, and so I'm just going to say the company name is Good Lawn Care and the rating is 0.5 star and the services is trimming and the services are trimming, mowing. So this is how you send data into an array. You give it the same key that'll put the data into an array. Point is, when I post to that route, I send it, you could see it sends the data right back to me. So I just want to show you that this data that I'm putting in here, it goes right into rec.body. It's an object that is in rec.body. Remember when I said rec.body.name? That pulls out that piece of information right there. So rec.body is an object. It's a JavaScript object that has all of the data coming from that form. So that's what's in rec.body. So what I'm doing here, I'm creating an object. That object has one property. And then I'm spreading rec.body. Those 3 dots, that's called a spread operator. And what it does is it takes the object and it breaks it down into its properties and its values. So all of those properties, like the name property, the services array, those properties get broken down and spread apart individually into this object. So I've got this new company that I now need to add to my array. So companies.push. Push is how we push an object onto an array. And the status is 201, which is created. and we can send the new company information back. Okay, so now we can create a new company. Let's see if I go back to Postman and I click send. This one has an ID of 3. We saw how we're just reading the ID. I can send it again, and I just created another one with the ID of 4, and create it again, and create another one with the ID of 5. We have nothing to protect us from the same company going in a bunch of times. And now if I go to get all companies, you can see 3, 4, and 5 are all there. But this data is just stored in RAM. So if I amend my source code and I click save and I reboot my server, all the data is lost, right? So if I go back to get all companies, I'm back to the original dummy data because it's just stored in RAM. It's not stored on a hard drive somewhere. Okay, you guys need probably 10 minutes just to take a breather. So do I. So let's take a break. It's 1:55, come back in 10 minutes. And we got more to do. I'm going to save this as create new company. And on my live stream, I'm just going to say 10-minute break. Ten-minute break. Be back at 2:05 CST. If you followed that video, you've probably seen a lot of this.
Yeah, it's all pretty much just flipped over.
A little nuances different. Okay, like the syntax here.
Dot 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 thing.
Yeah, the spread.
That's nice. It's convenient.
Really nice.
But yeah, this stuff I like. It seems like very logic based. It's where you gotta get here, put it in to get there.
I also like logical answers. Logical solutions. Some people like to solve things with emotion. There's other ways to solve problems. Some people solve problems with their emotions. And if you learn to think like this, you will solve things less with emotion and more with logic. Which I think is better, but that's my opinion.
I agree. No
You know?
emotion behind it.
Like the stock market,
You can't
you can't have emotion,
that
right?
completely
You
wipes
lose.
emotion out
You
of it.
lose. That's right. That's right. So you
I
got to
have-
learn to.
Yeah, I have friends who put emotion into it and they'll lose like thousands of dollars.
I mean, we're all human. It's hard to not, but some people can do it better than others. You've had friends that, they've lost.
They've lost so much money. Like they'll be sitting there and I'll watch them like spiral. They'll lose, and this isn't like day trading, so they'll lose like 500. Like, oh, well, then I see this setup here. I'm taking this. They lose another 500. I'm gonna triple down so I can make it back. And sometimes they make it back, but usually they kind of just go a little more than I'm done for a week,
Right.
and then the next day they're back.
Yeah, over the summer
No,
they.
they are very smooth.
Yeah. Well, the old wheels would scratch the floor really bad, and they cleaned up the floors. I mean, they're shinier than they were. So once they buffed up the floors real nice, and they wanted to replace the wheels, so they didn't do that again.
Yeah. And it is really easy to just.
Yeah. The chairs are borderline comfortable. They're almost comfortable.
I'd go back up to Micro Center and just buy a bunch of just little gaming chairs.
It's expensive, man.
Yeah.
What do they cost? $100?
Depending on which ones you get, they vary from about 100 to 400.
Yeah, I mean, I was even up at IKEA. I don't know what I'm doing at IKEA, but I was in IKEA and I saw their gaming chairs, which IKEA is known for being pretty affordable.
Right.
And it was still $100 for their gaming chairs at IKEA.
I think like the one that I got for like my house, under my discount was like still like $130.
Was it worth it?
Yeah, I like my chair a lot. But
To be fair, it's something that you should get many hours out of.
and they come with a I think what really does, they come with a 5-year warranty. So if anything happens to you, just bring it to them.
You know what's in for a chair for me, and look, I don't have to have the most comfortable chair, but I like a breathable chair. I like a mesh back.
Mm-hmm.
That's, to me, you give me a good mesh back, because I don't want my back to get sweaty. You know? So I like a good mesh back on my chair. You can give me a nice leather chair and it's just going to be hot and sweaty. I don't want all that.
Yeah, no, mine are leather either. I don't like the leather chairs.
Okay. So what do we got? We got creating companies. We got getting all companies. The operation that is typically the hardest, syntax-wise, I mean, as far as writing logic, is update. Updating an entity is always slightly more complex than the rest. That's just my opinion. So let's do an update. So we're going to update a company with a put operation. So again, that's an HTTP verb. We're going to have a what company are we updating, right? That's :ID. That is a route variable. Remember that it's accessible off of rec.params.id. That's how you get okay. And you guys are noticing the reality of the situation when you code in 2025 and you got a Copilot, it's going to want to spit it out for you. I try not to lean on that too much. I look at the suggestion, if I like it or I don't like it. Regardless, the obvious thing is you got to know the code that you're responsible for and that you're writing. So a lot of times I'll escape out of it. Even if it suggests it, I might type it because for me, I learn by coding. I don't learn by auto-filling. Does that make sense? So even if I still code it. I still write the code myself as much as I can. Now, with that being said, I'm also in a rush up here because I'm trying to get this demo done in a reasonable amount of time. So I might lean on it a little bit. I try not to too much. What do we need to do here? We need to... This company is in an array. So the index in the array is its position, right? Company 0. Is it position 0? That's the first company. We all know arrays, 0, 1, 2, 3. So you find the company's index. That's where you would start by when you're update a company. Find that company's index. So let's make a variable called company index. And we're going to run a find index. Companies. That's our company's array, find index. So lambda, so the company object where the company's ID is equal to rec.params.id, again, that route variable. If the company index is not found, meaning it's -1, so find index would return a -1 if the company's not in there, if the ID is not found. We're going to return status 404, company not found. Remember your if statements. If they just have one statement in the if statement, they do not require curly braces. If you have multiple statements, they require curly braces. So this is a really condensed syntax to write that if statement on one line. Because there's not multiple statements, there's only one semicolon there, you don't need the curlies even. I did not mean to tab all that in, so no, we're not doing that. So now we need to update that actual company inside of the company's array. Company's sub index, company index that was found. This is another, Brody told me he liked the spread operator. He's like, that's a nice syntax. I was unfamiliar with that. So we're going to use that spread operator again. But first, we're going to spread the current data. And then we're going to spread rec.body. Okay, let's talk about this one-liner. Let's talk about this liner. We are updating the company in the array equal to its current values. So you spread the current company first. You take the object and you spread it with its individual properties and values. And then this comma spreads the rec.body. So if a matching value is found, like the company name, it will take what comes second. So if the company name is twice, it'll put the current company name here. Then it'll update it with the company name here. The company name that comes second will be the one that wins. So the new name will overwrite the old name. So if there's competing property names, I would say. And then all we have to do is respond res.status200 with the JSON with the company's sub-company index. Okay, so that's the update operation. Let's make a new request. New request. The important thing to remember is make this a put. Let's grab this. Let's copy that. This is put that / company 3. Now there is no company 3, right? Unless we create it. So there, I created Good Lawn Care. If I get all my companies, now there's Good Lawn Care. So that's name property. We're going to change this to be a put. That was the point that I was trying to make, that I left hanging. This is an update operation. It's a put. We're updating company 3. We have to send data from body, form encoded. We're going to send the name property, because this is an update. We're updating the name. We're going to update it with a hyphen Goods Lawn Care. We can send it, and we can see it send. Okay, that's not quite right. it still says the name is good, lawn care. So if I send it, see if that update worked, it did not. Companies, company index, spread that, comma, spread rec.body. This is a put API companies. This is good because eventually you're going to hit a bug in yours, right? And you have to learn how to troubleshoot. So I'm glad I got to this to bring in,
Did you need to give a key?
Well, the key was the ID of 3,
Oh, or
the company ID, right? So the first thing you can do is console log company index. Console log company index is company index. Okay? So the first thing that we can learn to do is this is debugging. We don't have breakpoints, unfortunately, on Express. So I love breakpoints and I love stepping into code, but we don't have that. So we have to debug differently, and we're going to debug with the console.logs. So in this case, I kind of need to create my company again because right now I rebooted, so therefore I have 2 companies. I can create the 3rd company, so now I've got 3 companies. I'm going to call this update company. Oh, see that? I somehow lost name. Is that what you meant? I somehow lost the name property. There it goes. Problem solved. But if I go back here, you could see it actually tells me the value of my variable, which was the company index. So console logs can be used, that's called tracing. It's called tracing your variables, because at that point in the program, I wanted to make sure that my company index was a value of 2. And I tested to see that company index was a value of 2. So that's good. I don't need that line in there. My update is in fact working. Does it work 100% of the time? I don't know. I didn't test it, but you get the general idea. Now, where it gets complex always is with arrays. So let's test it. So member services. This might be where things start going haywire. Trimming, mowing. What if I wanted to add blowing leaves? So I click blowing leaves. Oh, it rebooted, so my company's gone. So let's do that. Created the company. If I click update, see how it replaced my services? You'd have to write the logic in there so you don't lose your array of services. Okay, and that's just a little bit more JavaScript logic. It's something to fix. Okay, I'm not going to hone in on that right now because there's enough other stuff to show. So services doesn't work on the update operation, but if I go back to here, you could see the way it's working as we've coded it. Let's write a delete, app.delete. Arrow, curly. Okay. So what I did is I got my initial length of my array. Companies.length. And then I used a filter. So I reassigned the companies array equal to a filter method, companies.filter, where the company's ID is not equal to rec.params.id. So basically, this filter keeps all of the companies that don't have the matching ID. So you're just removing the one with that ID. Make sense? You're removing the company with the ID that comes across right here. And then if that company's .length still equals the initial length, so we tried to filter out one company, but if the length didn't change, we say company not found. Otherwise, res status. Now it's suggesting 204. Let's HTTP status codes 200. 204 is no content. There is no content to send for this request. A lot of times, it's not considered best practice to send objects back like you added a new customer. Here's all the customer information. So a lot of times you use this 204, you know, is like, hey, this is successful. It's a 200 code, but there's no content that I'm going to give you. I deleted a company, but I'm not going to like tell you the company I deleted. I'm just going to give you a success message, a 200 message. Okay, and so I'll say 204, which is no content, and I'll give a little message that says company deleted, or something like that. So that's what 204 is. Now if I go back here, get all companies, let's make a new request right here, change its verb to delete, and let's delete company 3. There's company 3. So we get all companies, we create a new company. So there's my company of 3. There's Good Lawn Care. There's my delete company. And if I send that across, I get a 204 no content in return. If I go back here, send, we're cooking. Okay, so I've done CRUD operations. I've gotten all my companies. I've got a single company. I've updated a company. I've added a company. I've deleted a company. Cool. Let's do a little refactoring, because actually having your routes inside of your primary file like this, where Express is booting up, that's not best practice. JavaScript can have modules, and we want to use those modules, and this is like too much code in this file. Okay, so we want to keep this file without the routes. We don't want the routes in here. So give me a second. Okay. So I'm going to make a folder here that are for my routes. And another folder under there that's for my API routes. Routes. This is routes API. And I will make a JavaScript file called company.js. Okay. So this is going to allow me to extract those routes into this file, and I'll export them and then use them like nothing has changed, but it's just refactoring this code a little bit. So what we have to do here is just like we did over here, we have to use express. Now we're using this syntax to bring in express. So let's bring in express. And there's a router module, so I'm going to say const router equals express.router. So over here we just say we call express. Over here we call express.router, and we create this variable called router. And then at the end of this file, we are going to export router as company router. So we do a named export, and we're calling it company router. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut. It's actually not quite easy as a cut and paste. Because over here, we get to import router up at the top. So we export it over there. So we're going to import, let's see, do an order. Yeah, we'll just do this here. Import, we called it company router, from current directory routes API. So that's routes API company.js. So that's company router. And down here, we're going to do app.use /API/companies, comma, company router. Okay, now this is a little weird. Zone in for me, guys, because you will have this question. Ryan, you hear me? Deshaun, you hear me?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I just didn't know if you guys. Okay, two things that are happening here. Number one, this import, we're importing a named export from this specific file that's in this location. Now that we have that, this is actually setting up part of the express route. The first part of the express route is /API/companies. So we're defining /API/companies here, and then we finish the route. We have to finish what is the full path to the route over here. So if I want this route, we already have defined /API/companies. I'm going to extract it. I'm going to cut. And so I don't typically do this, but just to show you, like, hey, you could do it in this file, but we're going to move it over to this file instead, just to show you that this is better. Um, so what we do over here is we paste, but it's router.get instead of app.get. Now it becomes, well, it just showed it, router.get. And you actually don't need anything here. I'm just going to put a /. So the full path to this route is /API/companies, and that will get all of my companies. And it says, requires not defined in ES module scope. You can use import instead. And that is unhappy about company.js. Oh, import express. Import express. No. And so this is where I'm getting my syntaxes between require is not defined in the ES module scope. We did it over here. Because I'm used to using the newer syntax, so now I'm trying to use the older syntax, and it's here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to change this to the new syntax. Import express from express, because I know that works. I'll do the same thing over here. Import express from express. We'll use the newer syntax. And now we have to change the type of module over here. That way I'm not battling this right now. That's what I'm used to doing anyways. Now everyone's happy using the new syntax. Okay, importing express from express. There's my router. There's my get all companies. Now also my company data is not over here anymore. My company data is here. So let's spit that there. Okay, so all I've done is I've refactored this one route to get all companies. And let's see. Okay, it's still returning the 2 companies. Here's the important part for those of you who are just worried about the basics. The full path is defined right here. API/companies, and I just have a / there that means that's the root. Now you could actually leave that blank, and I think that's still going to work. And it does. But I actually like putting the / in there. Okay, so let's bring over the other routes and refactor them. So there's cut and paste, cut, save, paste, and then I just have to delete this part. So this is get a company by ID, and instead of that, it's router.get, router.post with the /. That looks good. This is router.put, just leaving the ID. That's correct. This is router.delete, just passing the ID. So it's string concatenation. You're concatenating this string with this string. And now I can come back into here. I can get all my companies, create a new company, update a company, and delete a company. 204 no content was correct. Okay. very quickly, I can do the same thing because there's also jobs, right? So in my routes API, I'm going to click on this API folder, new file, job.js. I'll refactor my jobs out of here into this file. And I'm not going to make you guys watch all of this, but you can get the idea. Company, so we bring in Express Router. We're going to export the router as job router. Then on index.js, we're going to import job router from that file. We will app.use jobs. So now I can get all jobs with this route right here. This is router.get. At the root, send back all the jobs. Okay, so I'm going to close that. I'm going to collapse my company requests. I'm going to make a folder for job requests, to which I'll add a request here. It's a GET request. Localhost 2025 API jobs. This will be get all jobs, and it sends back my 2 jobs. Let me make a few more jobs here, refactor this to get the ID, router.get, that's good. I don't know if it's I don't know if that's Copilot that understands how to refactor so easily.
How many times have you done this?
How many times have I done this?
Yeah.
Probably, I've been working with Express for about 5 years.
I mean, like, how many times have you done this exact example?
This is my second time doing this exact example.
Well, I was gonna say if you did it like a lot of times, it might just know what.
Yeah, maybe. Well, it might just need it just might need one other, because I have one other. So there's my update my job by its ID. And last but not least is my delete. Delete by ID. Using all the same logic. That's why I'm okay copying and pasting, because I've already explained my logic here, right? So, okay. And I'm not going to make a bunch of Postman routes because that just take up a lot of time. All right. I'm going to show off. The next thing is a new package. Check it out. So npmjs.com,
What
a
is daily dev?
debug. Daily dev is like reading, just a bunch of developer articles to read. So it's my homepage. I'm going to search for the debug package. A lightweight debugging utility for Node.js and the browser. You ever write HTML in Notepad?
No.
Good.
Yes.
Yes. Not so much fun, is it, Deshaun?
No, it's not.
Why not?
It's not an IDE.
It's not an IDE. It doesn't show.
The front end stuff. Yep.
Doesn't have like nice color coding, you know, like you put your tags, like your tags are blue, your attributes are green, your values are blue, you know, yellow. Like it recognizes these different parts of HTML and color codes them. Well, when I was showing you guys a little bit of debugging before, I used a console.log, and console.log is pretty ugly. There's no color coding. When it comes to debugging, as you can start to see, there's a lot of files. You would all agree there's a lot of files already. And so what's broken where? It can be hard to debug. Okay, so having like color coding, like, hey, here's a console log from this file, it's yellow. Here's a console log from this file, it's purple. Here's a console log from this file, it's green. Okay, so this debug package is used to help you troubleshoot different files, have different colors and different names, so you can debug a little more efficiently. Let me stop the app from running. And let's npm I the debug package. Okay. Next thing is there's an environment variable called debug. It says all of our, you kind of make these what are called channels. And the channels are color coded representing the files. And so all of our channels are going to start with the word app and then have a colon and then the name of the channel. So think of them like text channels in Discord or something. So, so on our index file, to bring in debug, there's actually, it's two liners. Import debug from debug. And then we make a variable const debug index app.index. So this file here, debug index, is essentially a method. You can use that method as a console.log. So if I take this console.log and I replace it with debug index, I save my source code and I run. Okay, I start getting some colors saying, hey, this is coming from app.index. And if I do something similar over here, I'm going to take these two lines and put it inside of job.js. And when I go to, but this is debug, maybe job, app job. Now, when I go to get all of my jobs, I can do a getting all jobs. And so if I go to Postman, get all jobs, send that a request, we get the response back. But we start getting like, here's a green, here's a yellow. These are debugs that we will use for troubleshooting, which is very valuable in Express because, like I said, there's no breakpoints. You have to use these. You have to use these console logs, and essentially all this is a fancy console.log. It is the equivalent of an IDE versus Notepad++ for writing HTML. I do think that as I was refactoring this, check this. Let me make sure that get all companies works. Did I test? I did test this, didn't I? Get a company by ID. That company isn't found. If I do 2. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure I tested that. Added a company. I forgot if I did that. Okay. Update the company. Okay, so that's debug. I've covered that. Let me check my notes because there's a lot I wanted to cover. I think we're ready for, no, we're not ready for deployment. Okay, front end, back to the front end for a little bit. This is a React template. Hello world, if you will, doesn't do much. And it tells you right here to edit the app JSX. And I know you guys have had like this much exposure to React, so I'm not expecting you to be React experts here, but you've had a lot more exposure to HTML. And so all I'm really gonna do is I'm gonna focus on the HTML here, and I'm gonna change my front end a little bit. And so if I kind of close up the back end files, I'm going to go into my front end files, into source, and here's app.jsx. This is basically, you can see main calls app. So like main's really where it starts, but main really just calls app. And if I go to app, this is my HTML. This is Vite plus React. Right? Like remember if I just put my name here, I said this earlier, I save that. I actually have to terminate this, Control C, CD to my front end, npm run build to kind of regenerate that front end file. Then I go CD back and run my back end script, npm run, what do I call it, dev? Oops, start. npm run start. And if I click on it, okay, now I've got my name there. Okay, but if I didn't rerun that build script on the front end, that wouldn't have worked. So that's a step to remember. And I'm going to automate this later so that this is like a lot more efficient, because this is inefficient for sure right now to have to like rerun a build script every time you change your source code. But I actually wrote a little bit of front end code for this dummy site, and it's all in, it's just Bootstrap, and what I'm going to do here is I got a little bit of CSS. And so this is my index.css file. And again, this kind of comes with the template, right? I'm going to replace this just with some other CSS. Okay, now all I really used here is Bootstrap. This is Bootstrap CSS. This is Bootstrap icons. We've got some Bootstrap icons. We've got Bootstrap CSS. And we've got a Google font called Playfair. So I've got 3 imports, and I've got some CSS. You can see here I said Uber-inspired color scheme, just black and white and some green or whatever it is. Okay, so that's my index CSS. Pretty normal CSS. You should all be familiar with CSS, yes? That's wonderful. And then inside of my app, I just have some Bootstrap stuff. Don't need any of that. All I'm using is app CSS. It's a lot of HTML. I didn't write this from scratch, but it's Bootstrap, pretty basic stuff. let's see. So the important thing I would point out about React is you have to have one parent. So here we've got this function called app, and we're returning inside of there, you write your HTML, and this is called a React fragment. It's just so that you have one parent. So there's one parent that is this React fragment. Other than that, we just have a bunch of Bootstrap classes, a bunch of HTML, a bunch of Bootstrap classes, and now I need to do another build. So I'm going to cd to my front end, npm run build, because I changed my HTML. And let's see if I did this right. cd dot dot, npm run start, my back end. Okay. It's nothing crazy. It's a Bootstrap site. It could use some images, but it's got some icons. It's got some real basic animations, like little hover effects, a little bouncing on the buttons, little hover effects here. It doesn't have to be pretty, but I just wanted to show you how to change your front end.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah, thanks. You can still get to the back end, by the way, right? And so just because we've been using Postman doesn't mean that we can't go into here and go /API/companies and we get some data sent back. Keep in mind these routes, even though I'm showing you the routes here, it is not normal for the user to go to these back-end routes. Users hit front-end routes. Front-end routes return HTML. And your React app will use this data to display it on the page in a way that looks normal. This does not look normal. This is not what an end user would see. I'm just showing you the back-end routes are still running. Again, back-end routes are for software to use, right? Your React app calls the back-end route to display that data on the front end. Okay, so back-end routes for your API routes are used by software. Front-end routes are for the users to hit and display web pages. So back-end routes, front-end routes. Front-end routes are used for the users. Back-end routes are used by software. So, okay. So there's the front end with a working back-end API. This is a full stack app, right? And now the fun part is trying to get this deployed to Google Cloud. Deployment. I've done this before. It's worked before. It's worked many times before. And then last year, it got hosed up. Something on my machine, something somewhere last year got hosed up for me. And it's pretty rare that I can't fix a problem. And I'm going to fix it this year if it's still broken. I already have thought of a different solution. But last year, I kind of got stuck a little bit. Because this is running on localhost and I want it live on the internet. I want both. I want the full stack app on the internet. So you guys have Google Cloud credits. You go to console. .cloud.google.com. Okay. It'll get you here. You guys will have to do this for your final projects. You will deploy to Google Cloud your final projects. Google Cloud is where it's going to be hosted. So I've got projects. I got a new project. So let's create a new project. And this is going to be called, we called this silly thing the Lawn Connect, right? So we're just going to call it Lawn Connect. New project, Lawn Connect. Step one, create project, select the project. Now we're working in Lawn Connect. There's a project number and a project ID. I need that project ID. Because back here, close. Now I need the command to switch my projects. And so let me close the things I don't need anymore. There's debug. Okay, so GCloud change project. So it is the command is GCloud config set project ID. That's right. Here, GCloud config set project ID followed by your project ID. So once you have a project ID on Google, you can run that command. Now, another thing I have to do here is I have to make sure that this project is set up to use my free credit billing. So if I go to billing and this is my credits. Let me click around here, manage account. Okay, so I do have one project linked since this was perfect. It does look like my billing account for education automatically has this Lawn Connect under it, because this is a mistake. If you don't link it to a billing account, you won't be able to deploy anything. So you got to get that in order, otherwise that won't work. So that's good. So let's run this command. GCloud config set project. GCloud config set project. Paste the project ID. That project ID again came from right here. So let's click. Now I haven't run GCloud commands in a while, and it's probably going to tell me that it's like updates are available for GCloud components. So I might need to update my GCloud to the most latest SDK. Okay, and there's a whole explanation of GCloud Run. GCloud Run is a tool Google makes that's built on top of what's called Docker and containers. It's a deployment tool that's meant to simplify deployment off of localhost onto the real world. So Docker is this idea. Developers are notorious for saying, it works on my machine, right? You ever heard that one before? Works on my machine, right? But then you put your code on someone else's machine and it doesn't work. And it's because there's a million things that can go wrong. And Docker is meant to simplify getting your code off of your machine onto someone else's machine in working state. Okay, GCloud Run is built on top of Docker. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes here, behind this command, but it's meant to simplify deployment. So I'm going to call deploy, GCloud Run deploy, and I'm going to call this Lawn Connect -service. Okay, now let's see what breaks. And this is where it typically would break for me. Okay. And the first question is, what's your root source folder? And that is correct. That is Lawn Connect MERN. That is the root location. So I'm just going to hit enter. And it says you could run -- source. Okay, and it says the following APIs are not enabled. Do you want to enable them? This will take a few minutes. I'm going to say yes. Okay. Where geographically are you closest to? And it looks like we are geographically closest to US Central 34. Okay, and you can set that to a default region. Deploying requires an artifact registry Docker repository, repository name, cloud run service deploy will be created. Sure. Allow unauthenticated. Yes. You do not have to put in your username and password to get to this. Okay. And now you wait for this to crash. We all wait for this to crash. Yeah. Unable to run time experience cannot. Please retry. The billing account is disabled or in a state of absence. So that's not. It is not happy with my billing account, although I should. Let me see if I can check some billing things. I thought I had my billing. Thought I had it squared away. So let's go here. Let's go here. Okay. Manage billing accounts. Okay. So I do have, if I search credits, okay, and these credits are under my billing account for education. Okay. So got $100 credit for any service on this billing account. So I've seen this before. I just got to get it wired up correctly. Oh, that was what I wanted. So if I go back here, your projects. There are no available billing accounts. To change the billing account, you must be an administrator. The weirdness that is this billing account for education is it's like there's been multiple of them, but pretty sure it's not going to work if I just try again, but I'm just going to try again. 34. Cannot read. Please retry. 403. The billing account for the owning project is disabled or in a state of absence. And so this is like a me problem. This is not a you problem. You guys will not have this problem. Mine, for whatever reason, is in a state of disabled.
What if it does happen to us?
What if?
Yeah.
Let's cross that bridge when we get there. I'm hoping I fix it right now. We got to figure out how to get this billing account out of the disabled state. Navigate to the billing section. That's where I am. Account management. Show roles. Billing account administrator. This account is funded by credits and not linked to a payment instrument. It will close automatically. So well, I will troubleshoot. I'll let you guys get to work on your labs while I troubleshoot this. Nonetheless, hopefully you found this useful. We got 95% of the way there, and I need a little troubleshooting to clean it up.